Finally, you're mine. Hannah Lee's whisper floated through the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Hyatt Ballroom, her manicured fingers adjusting the 10-carat diamond engagement ring that caught Seoul's city lights like a trapped star. She leaned into Seo Min-jun's shoulder, her Chanel gown rustling against his tailored black suit. Min-jun said nothing. He never did at these events. His silence was a language the elite had learned to read. Power didn't need words. The engagement party glittered with Korea's untouchable families. Champagne towers. String quartets. Men in $10,000 watches discussing mergers like battlefield strategies. Women in silk and pearls, their laughter sharp as glass. Hannah raised her champagne flute. To us, she murmured, lips curving into a smile that had been perfected since childhood. Min-jun lifted his glass. The toast hung in the air, unspoken. Then the ballroom doors exploded open. 2 children, a boy and a girl, no older than 4, burst past the security guards stationed at the entrance. Their small feet slapped against marble floors, designer shoes from the International District gleaming under lights. The boy wore a navy blazer. The girl a yellow sundress that bounced as she ran. They moved like missiles locked on a target. The string quartet's violins screeched to a halt. 300 heads turned. Appa. The word detonated through the silence. Appa, the children shouted again, louder this time, their voices high and breathless and impossibly certain. Hannah's champagne glass slipped from her fingers. Crystal shattered against marble. Golden liquid spread across white stone like blood. Min-jun's entire body went rigid. His face, always carved from ice, always unreadable, drained of color. The boy reached him first, small hands grabbing at Min-jun's pant leg. The girl crashed into his other side, her arms wrapping around his knee.
Appa.
Appa, we found you. The crowd erupted.
Gasps.
Whispers. Camera phones lifted like a synchronized swarm. Hannah's voice cracked through the chaos. What did they just call you? Min-jun couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. He stared down at the 2 children clinging to him like they'd been drowning, and he was sure. The boy had his eyes. Exact hazel. Exact shape. A mirror staring up at him. Min-jun. Haun. Come here now. The voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. Every head swiveled toward the entrance. A woman stood in the doorway, frozen between the guards who'd failed to stop the children. Nigerian. Late 20s. Her braided hair was pulled back, revealing a face both beautiful and terrified. She wore a simple cream blouse and jeans, nothing like the designer armor surrounding her. Aisha Okafor. Min-jun's world tilted on its axis. 5 years. 5 years since she'd vanished from his life like smoke. 5 years since he'd torn apart Seoul's underworld looking for her. 5 years of nothing. And now she stood 20 feet away, blood draining from her face, reaching desperately toward the children who'd called him Appa. Min-jun, Haun, please. Aisha's voice shook. She took a step forward. Min-jun's bodyguards moved instantly, blocking her path. 4 men in black suits, hands inside their jackets. Nobody leaves. Min-jun's voice was quiet.
Deadly.
The kind of quiet that made grown men reconsider their life choices. The bodyguards didn't move. The crowd held its breath. Cameras flashed like lightning. Someone's phone captured everything. The children, the woman, the MAFIA lord frozen in the center of his own engagement party. Hannah's nails dug into Min-jun's arm hard enough to draw blood through his suit.
Who are
they? Not a question. A demand laced with venom. Min-jun didn't answer.
Couldn't answer.
His eyes were locked on Aisha, on the way her hands trembled, on the panic etched into every line of her body. The little girl, Haun, tugged on his jacket. Appa, why is everyone staring? Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna and comment where you're watching from. Min-jun's knees bent.
Slowly,
mechanically, he lowered himself until he was eye level with the children. The boy, little Min-jun, touched his face with small, curious fingers. You look exactly like our picture. Min-jun's jaw clenched so hard his teeth should have shattered. How old are you?
His voice came out raw.
The girl held up 4 fingers, grinning. This many. For years old. Min-jun's mind raced backward. 5 years ago. The night Aisha had disappeared. 9 months before that would make. His gaze snapped up to Aisha. She was shaking her head, eyes pleading, mouthing the word no over and over.
How old are they?
Each word felt like a sentencing. Aisha's lips moved, but no sound came out. Answer him. Hannah's scream tore through the ballroom. The children flinched. Little Min-jun stepped in front of his sister protectively, his small body shielding her from the angry woman in the sparkly dress. Something cracked in Min-jun's chest. He stood slowly, turned to face Hannah. Her face was twisted with rage and humiliation, mascara already beginning to streak. The wedding is postponed. 5 words. Delivered with the finality of a judge's gavel. Hannah's hand moved faster than thought. The slap echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Min-jun's had barely turned from the impact. A red mark bloomed across his cheek. You bastard, she hissed. You absolute bastard. The crowd gasped. Phones recorded everything. Tomorrow's headlines were writing themselves. Aisha broke. She lunged forward, shoving past the bodyguards with a mother's desperate strength. Min-jun. Haun. We're leaving. But Min-jun's hand shot out, catching her wrist before she could reach the children. His grip was iron. You, he said, his voice so low only she could hear it. Don't get to run. Not this time. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. Let go. Not a chance. Please. 5 years. His grip tightened. 5 years you kept them from me. I was protecting them. From what? His face was inches from hers now, all pretense of control abandoned. From me? From their father? The word hung between them like a blade. Chairman Lee, Hannah's father, rose from his table in the back, his expression carved from granite. Businessmen whispered frantically into phones. The Lee family's reputation was imploding in real time. Haun started to cry. The sound shattered something in the frozen tableau. Little Min-jun wrapped his arms around his sister. Don't cry, Haun. Amma will fix it. She always fixes everything. Aisha jerked her wrist free and dropped to her knees, pulling both children into her arms. Her body curled around them like a shield. We're going home, she whispered into their hair. Right now. We're going home. Min-jun stood over them, a dark pillar in the center of the ballroom's wreckage. Broken glass. Spilled champagne. 300 witnesses to the impossible. Hannah laughed. A bitter, broken sound. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. She turned to the crowd, arms spread wide. Did everyone see? Did you all see your precious Seo Min-jun's little secret? No one spoke. No one moved. Hannah's face twisted. She grabbed her clutch and stormed toward the exit, heels clicking like gunshots. Her father followed, his expression promising consequences. The ballroom remained frozen. Min-jun crouched down again. This close, Aisha could see the storm in his eyes, rage and shock and something that looked dangerously close to grief. We need to talk, he said. There's nothing to talk about. I have children I didn't know existed. His voice cracked on the last word. There's everything to talk about. Aisha stood, pulling the twins with her. Little Min-jun and Haun clung to her legs, watching their father with wide, confused eyes. You made your choice 5 years ago, Aisha said. Her voice steadied, hardened. You chose power. You chose her. I chose them. She nodded toward the children. And I'd choose them again every single time. She turned toward the exit. If you walk out that door, Min-jun said quietly, my men will follow you. You won't make it 3 blocks without a security detail. You won't board a plane. You won't disappear again. Aisha stopped. Her shoulders trembled. You can't keep us here. Watch me. She looked back at him. For a moment, the ballroom disappeared. The crowd, the cameras, the wreckage of the engagement party. It was just the 2 of them, and 5 years of silence screaming between them. I hate you, she whispered. Min-jun's expression didn't change. I know. Aisha grabbed her children's hands and walked out. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Min-jun didn't follow. Not yet. He stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by shattered glass and 300 people who just witnessed the Seo Empire crack down the middle. His lieutenant, Jun, appeared at his elbow. "Boss, what do you want me to do?" Min-jun's eyes never left the doorway where Aisha had disappeared. "Follow them. Don't let them out of your sight. And Jun." His voice dropped to something cold and final. "If anyone tries to touch them, anyone at all, put a bullet in their skull." Jun nodded and vanished. Min-jun stood alone in the wreckage of his engagement party, staring at his hands. For years old. They were 4 years old. And he'd missed everything. Why are we packing again?" Little Min-jun sat on Aisha's bed, watching his mother throw clothes into a suitcase with shaking hands. Midnight had turned her small apartment into a cage of shadows. The streetlights outside flickered through thin curtains, painting everything in sickly yellow. "We're going on a trip, baby." Aisha's voice cracked. She grabbed another shirt, didn't fold it, just shoved it in. Haun clutched her teddy bear, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I don't want to go. I want to see Appa again." The word stabbed through Aisha like a knife. Haun listened to "But we finally found him." The little girl's voice rose to a wail. "You said we'd find him someday, and we did, and now we have to leave?" Aisha dropped to her knees in front of her daughter. "Baby, it's complicated. You always say that." Little Min-jun crossed his arms. At 4 years old, he'd already inherited his father's ability to cut through lies with silence. A knock at the door. Aisha's blood turned to ice. 3 more knocks. Steady. Patient. The kind of knocking that said, "I can do this all night." "Aisha." Min-jun's voice filtered through the cheap wood. "Open the door." She grabbed both children, pulling them behind her. "Go away. We need to talk." "There's nothing to say." "I have about 1,000 questions that say otherwise." Aisha's hands trembled as she zipped the suitcase. "You can't just show up here. You can't just." "Open the door."
"No."
Silence. 5 seconds of it. Then the door exploded inward. Not kicked. Min-jun had used his shoulder, controlled force that sent the lock tearing from the frame without destroying the entire door. Professional. Efficient. Terrifying. He stood in the doorway, rain-soaked from Seoul's midnight downpour, his expensive suit clinging to his frame. Behind him, 4 bodyguards filled the narrow hallway of her apartment building. Haun screamed. Little Min-jun grabbed his sister, pulling her back. "Get out." Aisha positioned herself between Min-jun and her children. "Get out right now or I'll..." "You'll what?" Min-jun stepped inside. Water dripped from his hair onto her floor. "Call the police?" "We both know how that ends."
He was right.
The Seoul Police Department had 3 officers on the Seo family payroll. Maybe more. "You don't get to run twice," Min-jun said quietly. Aisha's chest heaved. "I'm not running. I'm protecting them. From me." "Yes." The word hung in the air like a grenade. Min-jun's jaw clenched. He looked past her at the children huddled on the bed. Little Min-jun had wrapped both arms around Haun, his small body trying to be a shield. Something in Min-jun's expression cracked. "I'm not going to hurt them." His voice gentled. "I would never." "You're a killer." Aisha's voice shook with rage and fear and 5 years of running. "You're a mafia lord who's drowned this city in blood. You think I don't know what you do? You think I didn't see the bodies they pulled from the Han River with your signature carved into their chests?" Min-jun didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it. "They're 4 years old," Aisha continued. "They're babies. And you want me to just hand them over to a man who... I'm their father. You lost that right when you chose this life. I didn't know they existed." His voice rose for the first time. The bodyguards in the hallway shifted. "You didn't give me a choice. You just vanished. Because you were engaged." Aisha's hands balled into fists. "You were engaged to Hannah then, just like you were tonight. What was I supposed to do? Knock on your door with a positive pregnancy test? Become your dirty little secret?" Min-jun's eyes flashed. "I would have..."
"What?"
"Left her? Chosen me?" Aisha laughed. bitter and broken. You're Seo Min-jun. You don't choose love. You choose power. You always have. The apartment fell silent except for Houn's quiet sobbing. Min-jun's gaze drifted to the children again. Little Min-jun was whispering something to his sister, trying to calm her down. The boy's face was set in determination, the same expression Min-jun wore when making impossible decisions. How long have you been back in Seoul? Min-jun asked. 3 weeks. Why come back at all? Aisha's shoulders sagged. My mother is sick. Stage 4 cancer. She's in a hospice in Incheon. I came to say goodbye. Min-jun processed this. The engagement party was supposed to be in Busan. I checked. Aisha's voice turned accusing. You moved it to Seoul last minute. Chairman Lee's preference. Min-jun ran a hand through his wet hair. If I'd known, you wouldn't have changed anything. Aisha moved to the bed, sitting between her children. You never do. 5 years ago, the kitchen had been her sanctuary. Aisha remembered every detail. The marble countertops, the restaurant-grade stove, the way steam rose from pots like ghosts. She'd been hired through an agency, personal chef for one of Seoul's most powerful men. They told her he was a businessman. Real estate, import-export. They hadn't mentioned the guns. Or the men who came to his mansion at 3 a.m. covered in blood. Or the screaming she sometimes heard from the basement. Aisha had learned to be invisible.
Cook. Clean.
Disappear. Don't ask questions. Don't make eye contact. Survive. Min-jun had barely noticed her for 3 months. Then came the night the assassins broke in. She'd been making late-night japchae when she heard the gunshots. Glass shattering. Men shouting in rapid Korean. Her survival instinct screamed hide, but her feet moved toward the chaos. She'd found Min-jun in the hallway, bleeding from his shoulder, 3 bodies at his feet. More footsteps thundering up the stairs. Kitchen, she'd hissed.
Now.
He'd stared at her like she was insane.
Now.
They'd made it to the pantry, barely. Aisha had shoved him behind industrial shelving, pressed her hand over his mouth as boots stomped past. Her shoulder had caught a stray bullet through the door. The pain had been white-hot, blinding, but she hadn't made a sound. When the mansion finally fell silent, Min-jun had pulled her hand away from the wound. Why did you stay? His voice had been rough.
Shocked.
You could have run. Aisha had met his eyes for the first time in 3 months. Really met them. Hazel. Dangerous. Alive with something she couldn't name. Because you would have done the same. She didn't know why she'd said it. Didn't know if it was even true. But Min-jun had believed her. He'd pinned her against the pantry wall, his body covering hers, his breath hot against her neck. You're bleeding. So are you. His hand had cupped her face. Rough. Desperate. You should have run. I know. They'd kiss like the world was ending. Like the bodies outside the door didn't exist. Like consequences were for people who had futures to lose. One night. One impossible night of skin and heat and whispered names that tasted like goodbye. In the morning, he was gone. 3 weeks later, Aisha had seen the engagement announcement on the news. Seo Min-jun and Lee Hannah. Seoul's power couple. A marriage that would unite 2 empires. For weeks after that, she'd held a positive pregnancy test with shaking hands. 5 weeks later, she'd boarded a plane back to Lagos. Back in the present, Min-jun sat across from Aisha in her tiny apartment. The bodyguards had withdrawn to the hallway. The children had finally fallen asleep on the bed, exhausted from crying. You were pregnant. Min-jun's voice was flat. You knew. And you left. What choice did I have? You could have told me. Aisha's laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. You were engaged to Hannah even then. What was I supposed to do? Show up at your mansion with a sonogram? Ask you to choose between your empire and your chef? I would have. What? Aisha leaned forward. What would you have done, Min-jun? Really? He didn't answer. Because they both knew the truth. He would have chosen power. He always did. They're my blood. Min-jun stood abruptly. Paced to the window. Seoul glittered below them, a city built on secrets and violence. You had no right to keep them from me. I had every right. Aisha's voice turned to steel. I'm their mother. I've been there for every fever, every nightmare, every scraped knee. Where were you? I didn't know. Because you didn't ask. Aisha stood too, rage burning through exhaustion. That night meant nothing to you. I was just another. Little Min-jun's voice cut through their argument. Don't yell at Amma. Both adults froze. The boy had woken up. He stood beside the bed now, his small fists clenched, glaring at his father with 4-year-old fury. She's sad when you yell. Little Min-jun's voice shook, but held firm. Stop making her sad. Min-jun stared at his son. This tiny person who had his eyes, his stubborn jaw, his instinct to protect the people he loved. He knelt slowly. I'm sorry, Min-jun said. I didn't mean to make her sad. Little Min-jun studied him with unnerving intensity. Uncle Chitty says you're a bad man. Min-jun's jaw tightened. Uncle Chitty? Amma's friend in Lagos. The boy crossed his arms, a miniature mirror of his father. He said you're dangerous and we should stay away from you. He's probably right. The honest answer clearly surprised the boy. But I'm not bad to you, Min-jun continued quietly. I could never be bad to you. Or your sister. Or your mother. Then why does Amma cry when she looks at your picture? The question landed like a bullet. Min-jun looked up at Aisha. She turned away, shoulders shaking. Because I hurt her, Min-jun said. A long time ago. And I didn't know how to fix it. Little Min-jun considered this. Then he walked forward, small hand reaching out to touch Min-jun's cheek. You're warm, the boy said, surprised. Uncle Chitty said bad men are cold. But you're warm. Min-jun's throat closed.
He couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe.
This tiny human, his son, was touching him like he wasn't a monster. Haun stirred on the bed. Appa. She rubbed her eyes. What's happening? Appa is here, Little Min-jun announced. And he's not cold. Haun slid off the bed, padding over on bare feet. She grabbed Min-jun's hand with both of hers, tugging. Appa, do you know any stories? Min-jun looked helplessly at Aisha. She turned back around, tears streaming down her face, but she nodded. Min-jun's voice came out rough. I know some Korean folktales. Tell us one. Haun bounced on her toes. Please. Seo Min-jun sat on Aisha's floor, his expensive suit soaked and ruined, and told his children a story about a tiger and a persimmon. Little Min-jun leaned against his left side. Haun curled against his right. Aisha watched from across the room, her heart breaking and mending simultaneously. When the story ended, Haun yawned. Appa. Yes. Why don't you live with us? The question hung in the air like smoke. Min-jun looked at Aisha. She looked away. It's complicated, he said finally. Grown-ups always say that. Little Min-jun yawned too, rubbing his eyes. But it just means they don't want to tell the truth. Out of the mouths of children. Min-jun carried both kids back to the bed.
Tuck them in.
Little Min-jun was already half asleep, but he mumbled something that froze Min-jun in place. You're not bad, Appa. You're just sad. Min-jun stood there for a long moment, staring down at his children. These two perfect, impossible humans he'd helped create and never known existed. When he finally turned around, Aisha was watching him. You need to leave, she said quietly. Aisha. Please. Her voice broke. Just please.
Leave.
Min-jun moved toward the door.
Stopped.
Looked back. I'm not letting you disappear again. You can't stop me. Watch me. He walked out. The bodyguards followed. The broken door swung in the breeze. Aisha locked it as best she could, then slid down against the wood, head in her hands. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't open it. Should have known better. The message was short. Brutal. You have 48 hours to leave Korea. Or your twins disappear. Aisha's scream caught in her throat. Boss, you're smiling. Jun stood on the stone balcony of the Seo estate, watching his employer with undisguised shock. Below them, Two children ran through manicured gardens that had never seen life this chaotic. Little Min-jun chased Haun around a fountain, both of them shrieking with laughter. Min-jun didn't respond. His expression hadn't changed, still that slight upward curve at the corner of his mouth that June had never witnessed in 8 years of service. "I've literally never seen that," June continued. He was stocky, scarred, with a habit of chewing toothpicks when nervous. Right now he was on his third. "It's disturbing." "Shut up, June." "No, seriously. Your face is doing something weird. Should I call a doctor?" Min-jun's smile faded, but something remained in his eyes. Something that looked dangerously close to hope. "How long have they been here?" June asked. 3 hours. "And the mother?" "Inside. Refusing to speak to me." June snorted. "Smart woman." Min-jun shot him a look.
What?
"She is." June shrugged. "She kept your kids alive and hidden for 5 years. That takes either genius or pure terror. Maybe both." Below, Haun tripped. Before Min-jun could move, little Min-jun was already there, helping his sister up, checking her scraped knee with the seriousness of a surgeon. "The boy's got your instincts," June observed. "He's 4. And already protecting his family." June pulled out the toothpick. "That's genetic, boss."
Can't teach that.
Min-jun watched his son guide Haun toward a stone bench, speaking to her in soft tones that didn't carry up to the balcony. The girl nodded, wiping tears, then hugged her brother fiercely. "I didn't know I had something to smile about," Min-jun said quietly. "Until 3 days ago." June's expression sobered. "What are you going to do?" "Keep them. Hannah's family won't let this slide." "I don't care." "Boss." "I said I don't care." Min-jun's voice went cold. "Chairman Lee can burn for all I'm concerned." His daughter leaked the story to every news outlet in Seoul. "My children's faces are on the front page of every tabloid." June whistled low. "That's a declaration of war."
Good.
"Let it be war." Below, the children had discovered a koi pond. Little Min-jun was explaining something about fish to his sister, his hands gesturing wildly. "You're really doing this," June said, "choosing them over the empire." Min-jun didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. Inside the estate's kitchen, Aisha cooked jollof rice with shaking hands. She'd refused Min-jun's chef, refused his staff, refused everything except access to his kitchen and ingredients. Cooking was the only thing keeping her sane right now. The rice simmered. Tomato and pepper filled the air with familiar scent: Lagos, home, safety. Things she'd lost the moment she'd stepped back into Seoul. Her phone sat on the counter, the threatening message still glowing on the screen. 48 hours. She'd shown it to Min-jun immediately. Watched his face transform from stone to something molten and deadly. He'd made one phone call. Within an hour, she and the children had been moved to his estate, a fortress disguised as a mansion in Gangnam's hills. "You'll be safe here," he'd said. Aisha had wanted to argue, wanted to grab her babies and run to the airport. But the rational part of her brain knew the truth. Whoever sent that message had resources. Running wouldn't save them. So she'd agreed. Only for the weekend. Min-jun had nodded. They both knew it was a lie. Footsteps behind her. Aisha didn't turn. "You kept the kitchen the same," she said. Min-jun stopped in the doorway. "I haven't been in here since you left." "Why not?" "Because it reminded me of you." Aisha stirred the rice harder than necessary. Don't what?" "Don't say things like that." Her voice cracked. "Don't make this harder than it already is." Silence. Then Min-jun moved closer, leaning against the counter opposite her. He'd changed from his suit into dark jeans and a simple black shirt. Almost casual. Almost human. "I tried to find you," he said. "For 2 years I searched. Private investigators. International contacts. I tore apart every lead. You were engaged." Aisha kept her eyes on the pot. "What would finding me have changed?" "Everything." The word landed between them like a bomb. Aisha's hand stilled. She finally looked up. Min-jun's expression was raw, unguarded in a way she'd never seen. "You chose power over me," she said. The engagement was arranged months before that night in the pantry. You knew what you were doing. You knew it was temporary. Nothing about that night felt temporary. Then why didn't you call off the wedding? Min-jun's jaw clenched. The alliance between the Seo and Lee families was 10 years in the making. Billions of won in shared investments. Political connections that mattered more than me. Aisha turned back to the stove. I understand. I'm not angry about it anymore. I just need you to stop pretending it was something it wasn't. What was it then? A mistake. She ladled rice into a bowl. A beautiful, impossible mistake that gave me 2 perfect children. But still a mistake. Do you regret it? Aisha's hands trembled. Every single day. The lie tasted like ash. Min-jun stepped closer. Close enough that she could feel his body heat. I don't believe you. Believe what you want. You're terrified right now, he continued quietly. Someone threatened our children and you're falling apart. But you're still here, cooking in my kitchen, because some part of you knows this is where you belong. Aisha slammed the ladle down. I belong in Lagos with my children, away from your world of blood and threats, and you chose to come back. My mother is dying. You could have stayed away. Min-jun's voice gentled. You could have let her die without saying goodbye. You could have protected the twins by never setting foot in Korea again. But you didn't. You came back. Why? Aisha's eyes burned. Because I'm a good daughter. Or because you wanted me to find them. The accusation hit like a slap. How dare you? You brought them to my engagement party, Aisha. You could have stayed in Incheon with your mother. Could have kept them hidden for 1 more week until you flew home. But you brought 2 4-year-olds to the most publicized event in Seoul. Min-jun's eyes searched hers. Either you're incredibly careless, or you wanted this to happen. Aisha's throat closed. Because he was right. God help her, he was right. She'd seen the engagement announcement. Known it was in Seoul, not Busan like originally planned. And instead of avoiding it, she'd convinced herself the twins deserved to see their father from a distance. Just once. Just to know what he looked like in real life, not just the photos she'd saved on her phone. She'd told herself they'd stay hidden in the crowd. Told herself it was safe. But little Min-jun had spotted him across the ballroom and broken free before she could stop him. Or maybe she hadn't tried hard enough to stop him. I hate you, Aisha whispered. I know. Min-jun's hand lifted, hesitating an inch from her face. But you loved me first. Aisha jerked away before he could touch her. That person doesn't exist anymore. Then why are you crying? She wasn't. Or she hadn't been until he said it. Footsteps thundered through the house. Little Min-jun burst into the kitchen, Haun trailing behind. There's fish. Big orange fish. The boy was breathless with excitement. Haun tugged on Min-jun's jeans. Appa, can we feed them? Min-jun crouched automatically. After dinner. But they look hungry now. Fish are always hungry. It's a scam. He tapped her nose. They're trying to manipulate you. Haun giggled. Little Min-jun rolled his eyes in a gesture so similar to his father that Aisha's heart cracked. Can we eat now? Little Min-jun asked. I smell Amma's jollof. In 10 minutes, Aisha managed. Go wash your hands. The children thundered away. Silence fell again. They're incredible, Min-jun said. I know. You did that. Raised them alone. Kept them safe and happy, and his voice caught. I missed everything. First words. First steps. First. Don't. Aisha's hands gripped the counter. Please don't do this right now. If you do the same thing she did, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna, and tell me where you're watching from. Min-jun straightened. Nodded. Turned to leave. Min-jun.
He stopped.
Thank you, Aisha said quietly, for keeping us safe. He looked back at her. I would burn this city to ash before I let anything happen to them. Or you. Then he was gone. Bedtime came too quickly. Min-jun had insisted the twins take the master suite. He'd moved to a guest room. Aisha had her own wing. The estate was large enough that they could avoid each other completely. But when little Min-jun asked for a story, Aisha found herself standing in the doorway while Min-jun sat between both children, a book of Korean folktales in his lap. His voice was surprisingly gentle as he read about a woodcutter and a fallen star. Haun's eyes grew heavy. Little Min-jun fought sleep with everything he had. Appa. Haun mumbled. Why don't you live with Emma? Min-jun's reading paused. Aisha tensed in the doorway. It's complicated, he said carefully. That's what Emma always says. Haun yawned. But I think it means you're scared. Scared of what? Of being happy. The little girl's eyes drifted closed. Uncle Chitty says Emma is scared of being happy too. Because happy things always leave. Min-jun's throat worked. He looked up at Aisha. She'd wrapped her arms around herself, tears streaming silently. Little Min-jun, still fighting sleep, reached up and touched Min-jun's face. Are you sad, Appa? Sometimes. Uncle Chitty says you're a bad man. But bad men don't cry. The boy's eyes were so serious, so old for 4 years. You're not bad. You're just sad. Like Emma. The simple truth of it shattered something in Min-jun's chest. Sleep now, he managed. We'll talk more tomorrow. Promise. Promise. Little Min-jun's eyes finally closed. Within minutes, both children were breathing deeply, lost to dreams. Min-jun stood carefully, tucked the blanket around them, kissed each forehead with a tenderness that made Aisha's chest ache. He walked to the doorway, stopped beside her. They're right, he said quietly. I am scared. Of what? Of losing this before I've even had a chance to keep it. He finally looked at her. You are my earthquake, Aisha. I'm still feeling the aftershocks. Before she could respond, he walked away down the hall. Aisha stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her children sleep in a bed worth more than her entire apartment building. Midnight found Min-jun in his study, staring at a computer screen. Security footage from 5 years ago. The kitchen. Aisha cooking, her braids pulled back, humming something in Yoruba. She'd been laughing at something, probably a message from her mother. She'd looked so alive. So beautifully, impossibly alive. The footage cut to later that night. The assassins breaking in. Blood on marble floors. And then Aisha, pulling him into the pantry, her hand over his mouth, her own shoulder bleeding. Min-jun had watched this footage 1,000 times over 5 years. Footsteps behind him. He didn't turn. You kept that. Aisha's voice was soft. Min-jun's hand hovered over the keyboard. It's the only time I remember feeling human. Aisha moved into the study slowly, cautiously, like approaching a wounded animal. She sat in the chair beside his desk. Not close, but not running either. They watched the footage in silence. Watched their younger selves kiss like the world was ending. Watched something beautiful and doomed unfold in real time. I chose them over you, Aisha said finally. I'd do it again. I know, but if I'm honest, her voice dropped to barely a whisper. I've regretted leaving every single day since. Min-jun's hand found hers in the darkness. Just their fingers touching. Just enough connection to feel real.
So have I, he said.
Aisha's phone buzzed. Both of them jumped. Unknown number. Again. Aisha's hands shook as she opened the message. No words this time. Just a photo. Little Min-jun and Haun at the International Academy's playground. Taken today. Red circles around their faces. And a timer counting down. 36 hours remaining. Pack nothing. Min-jun's voice was granite as he stared at the photo on Aisha's phone. The red circles around his children's faces. The timer counting down. You're moving into the main wing.
Now.
Aisha's hands wouldn't stop shaking. I need to get them out of Korea. Tonight. We can. Run where? Min-jun looked up from the phone, his eyes cold fire. Whoever took these photos has international reach. They knew you were in Lagos. They waited until you came back. This isn't random. Then what do we do? Min-jun stood, already pulling his own phone. I end the war. He dialed. One number. The call connected immediately. June. Wake everyone. Every captain, every lieutenant, every soldier on payroll. I want a meeting in the estate war room in 30 minutes. His voice could have frozen blood. And June? Make sure they understand. This isn't a request. He hung up, looked at Aisha. I won't let them grow up in your world, she whispered. Min-jun crossed to her, gripped her shoulders, not rough, but desperate, his fingers trembling against her skin. Then let me end it. Let me burn everything I've built, so they can grow up in peace. You can't just watch me. His lips crashed against hers.
Brief. Fierce.
A promise sealed in a kiss that tasted like desperation and 5 years of silence. Then he was gone, footsteps echoing down the marble halls. Aisha stood alone in his study, touching her lips, feeling her world tilt off its axis. The war room filled with dangerous men. 32 of them.
Scarred. Armed.
Seoul's underground power structure compressed into one space. They sat around a black table that had seen more blood than most operating rooms. Min-jun entered last. The room fell silent. Someone threatened my children, he said without preamble. I want to know who.
I want to know why.
And I want them found before the sun rises. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A captain named Sung, thin, wiry, missing 2 fingers on his left hand, spoke up. Boss, with respect, the Lee family has been making moves since the engagement party disaster. This has their fingerprints. Then we start there. Min-jun's jaw was set. June, pull every surveillance feed from within 5 blocks of that academy. Cross-reference with known Lee operatives. I want faces, license plates, anything. June nodded, already typing on a tablet. Another lieutenant raised his hand. What about collateral damage? If we move against the Lees, we're starting a war that'll paint the streets red. I don't care. The room went deathly quiet. Boss, Sung tried again. The Lee Empire controls half of Seoul's. I don't care. Min-jun's voice dropped to something lethal. Touch my family, and I burn yours. That's the new rule. Spread it to every family, every crew, every 2-bit gangster who thinks they can use children as leverage. He leaned forward, palms flat on the table. Aisha Okafor and her twins are under Seo protection, which means they're untouchable. Anyone who violates that, I'll personally put a bullet between their eyes. June's tablet beeped. His face went pale. Boss, you need to see this. The screen projected onto the wall. Surveillance footage from earlier that day. 2 men in dark suits trailing little Min-jun and Haun at the academy playground. Professional. Careful. Keeping distance. The footage jumped to a second camera. The men getting into a black sedan. License plate clearly visible. June's fingers flew across the keyboard. Plates registered to a shell company. 3 layers deep. But he pulled up another screen. Final ownership traces back to Chairman Lee's personal security firm. The room exploded. I told you. The Lees are asking for. We need to move now. Min-jun raised one hand. Silence fell like a hammer.
June.
Send the footage to every news outlet in Korea. I want Chairman Lee's face plastered on every screen by morning. Boss, that's. Do it. June hesitated, then nodded. Min-jun turned to the room. The rest of you, I want a detail on my children 24 hours a day. Rotating shifts. No one gets within 50 feet of them without going through 5 checkpoints. Am I clear? 32 voices. Yes, boss.
Good.
Now get out. All of you. The room emptied in seconds. Only June remained. You're really doing this, June said quietly. Declaring war on the Lee family. They declared war when they aimed a camera at my children. This will cost you everything. The alliance. The political connections. Half your empire will fracture. Min-jun met his lieutenant's eyes. Then let it fracture. I built an empire on fear. Aisha built a family on love. Guess which one lasts? June pulled the toothpick from his mouth. Studied it. Never thought I'd see the day. What day? The day Seo Min-jun chose something over power. He grinned. About damn time, boss. Dawn broke over Seoul like a wound. Aisha sat in the estate's kitchen, watching the twins sleep on the couch in the adjacent room. She'd refused to let them out of her sight, had carried them downstairs wrapped in blankets, settled them on cushions where she could watch their chests rise and fall. The television mounted on the wall played morning news on mute. Then the headline flashed. Breaking, Lee family security firm linked to stalking incident. Children of MAFIA, Lord Seo Min-jun allegedly targeted. Footage played. The two men following her babies. The black sedan. Chairman Lee's face in a corporate photo, the caption reading under investigation. Aisha's phone exploded with messages. News outlets. Reporters. People she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored all of it except one text from Min-jun. It's done.
They can't touch you now.
But even as relief flooded through her, dread followed. Because this meant war. Real war. The kind that ended with bodies and burning buildings. The kind her children would grow up surrounded by. Have you ever felt this kind of fear? Comment your experience and where you're watching from. The kitchen door opened. Hannah Lee walked in. Aisha shot to her feet. How did you get in here? I know the security codes. Hannah's designer coat was immaculate despite the early hour. Her makeup perfect. Her smile sharp as broken glass. I was engaged to the man who owns this place, remember? Get out.
Relax.
I'm not here to hurt anyone. Hannah moved to the counter, poured herself coffee from the pot, like she owned the space. I'm here to offer you a deal. I'm not interested in 5 million won.
Cash.
Deposited in any account you want. Hannah sipped her coffee. All you have to do is take your bastards and disappear. For good this time. Aisha's hands clenched into fists. They're not bastards. They're his children. They're mistakes. Hannah set down the cup. You were a mistake. That night was a mistake. And now Min-jun is throwing away everything we built for a woman who can't even. Careful. Aisha's voice went deadly quiet. You're in my space now.
Talking about my children.
I'm Nigerian, Hannah. We don't take insults well. Hannah's smile widened. Is that a threat? It's a fact. They stared at each other across the kitchen. Two women. One man's past and future colliding in real time. He'll never love you the way he loved the Empire. Hannah said finally. Power is his first language. You're just a translation error. Maybe. Aisha moved closer. But I gave him something you never could. A reason to walk away from it all. Hannah's composure cracked. Just for a second. Just enough to show the rage beneath. My father will destroy him for this, she hissed. The news story, the public humiliation. Min-jun just signed his own death warrant. Then your father's a fool. Aisha's voice stayed calm. Because the man who protected me from assassins 5 years ago? The man who would burn Seoul to ash for his children? That man doesn't lose wars. He ends them. Hannah threw the coffee cup. It shattered against the wall, ceramic exploding like shrapnel. The twins woke up screaming. Aisha was across the room in seconds, pulling both children behind her. Get out. Now. This isn't over, Hannah snarled. Not even close. She stormed out. The kitchen door slammed hard enough to rattle windows. Little Min-jun clutched his mother's shirt, shaking. Who is that? No one important, baby. Haun started crying. I want Appa. He'll be here soon, I promise. But even as Aisha said it, her phone buzzed. Jun's name flashed on the screen. She answered. You need to come to the estate gates. Jun's voice was tight.
Now.
Bring the kids. What happened? Just come. Please. The estate gates were chaos. News vans. Reporters. Cameras everywhere. Police cars with lights flashing. And at the center of it all, Chairman Lee himself, flanked by lawyers and private security. Aisha pushed through the crowd, twins clinging to her hands. Bodyguards Jun had sent cleared a path. Chairman Lee spotted her. His smile was reptilian.
Ah.
The woman herself. What's going on? Aisha demanded. I'm here to collect my son-in-law. Chairman Lee gestured to the police. Officers, if you would. 2 cops stepped forward. One held up an arrest warrant. Seo Min-jun, You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. You have the right to. On what evidence? Jun stepped between them and his boss. On evidence I've been compiling for 10 years. Chairman Lee's smile widened. I always knew Min-jun would betray the alliance eventually. I just needed him to give me a reason to use it. Min-jun appeared at the estate entrance.
Come.
Controlled. He walked down the steps like a king approaching his execution. Appa. Haun tried to run to him. Aisha held her back. Min-jun's eyes found his children. Something in his expression softened. It's okay, he said. I'll be back soon. You'll be in prison for 20 years, Chairman Lee corrected. If you're lucky. The police moved to handcuff him. Min-jun didn't resist. Just kept his eyes on Aisha and the twins. Take them somewhere safe, he said to Jun. Somewhere the Lees can't find. Boss. Do it. Little Min-jun broke free from Aisha's grip, ran to his father, wrapped small arms around Min-jun's legs. Don't go, the boy sobbed. Please don't go. Min-jun knelt awkwardly, handcuffs clinking, kissed his son's forehead. Be brave for your sister.
Can you do that?
I don't want to be brave. I want you to stay. I know, buddy. I know. Haun ran over too, threw herself at her father. Min-jun held both children as best he could with bound hands, his face finally cracking, tears streaming silently. Aisha watched the man she'd loved, still loved, God help her, being torn away from his children by forces he couldn't fight with bullets or threats. Chairman Lee leaned close to her, whispered so only she could hear. 48 hours. Then your children disappear. Charges or no charges, I always finish what I start. He straightened, smiled for the cameras, walked to his limousine like he'd already won. The police pulled Min-jun away. The twins screamed. Aisha grabbed them both, holding them as they fell apart. Min-jun looked back one last time before they shoved him into the police car. His lips moved. No sound carried, but Aisha could read them. I love you.